you have been cautioned. Several times. Darcy Atkinson was not nice, not kind, and not pleasant. If she ever was, it was a means to an end. And if she ever took a special interest in someone, it meant that that person was about to be taken for a ride. And yet, no matter how widely known her reputation, Darcy had a way about her that seemed to capture everyone's attention. One guy had said he'd fallen in love with the woman, despite being aware that she would never be serious with him. But he had described it as the most exhilarating descent. Another woman, who'd become friends with her, had described the treatment she'd received as being a pampered animal on the way to the slaughterhouse. And therein lied the reason no one said no to Darcy. The thrill of the ride was worth the crash at the end, apparently. These thoughts roll across your mind like breaking news headlines when you look up at the beautiful face that has suddenly uttered a hello to you. You don't want to engage her, preferring to wave a pendulous hand in response. Turquoise eyes regard you with intrigue, and you look away, not wanting to spend another moment letting her scrutinize you. Instead of moving along, as you would expect her to, Darcy decides your dismissal isn't to her liking. She sits down in the booth seat across from you, the unexpected move startling you. By nature, you're reserved, and at this moment, you wish your disposition was a bit different. You feel leered at, like Darcy is hunting you. You want to appear intimidating and frighten the woman who is mildly frightening you, but it's nothing more than a mere wish. Her face bears a smugness that makes it hard to swallow the mouthful of food you're holding, as if she knows a secret that you don't. The physiological act seems too embarrassing to perform, so you don't. You sit there with bulbous cheeks and a blank stare. Your waiter comes up, assuming that Darcy is part of your dinner party of one, and asks what she would like to order. Of course, she does nothing to dissuade the notion and orders a sparkling wine and chef's soup. You're not sure what it is, but it's clear that Darcy doesn't either, as she finally glances at the small de jour menu sitting between you two. Darcy Atkinson was the only in-house model hired for your magazine, Travel and Style, and for the last 3 years had been featured in almost every full-page spread for the magazine's destination of the month. There had been rumors that she slept her way into the position with the art director, but you knew that that was verifiably impossible. Tex Lawson had confessed to being closeted to you one night in Monaco. You'd asked directly about the rumor, to which Tex had guffawed heartily, his charming face scrunching in odd delight. He'd admitted that Darcy was sexy as hell, but he only appreciated her like one appreciated fine art. You never corrected the perpetual whispered rumor, even when it was told to you for what someone assumed was the first time. You never felt it was your place. But it was a good piece of information to have. You held no doubt that Darcy was just beguiling enough to get where she needed to on her own. You'd seen how she communed with your colleagues. She operated with a subtle condescension, as if she were the main character, and everyone was just fortunate to be cast in her life, no matter how minor the role. You'd decided early on in the spread of the relevant rumors that you would not be one of those people. Now you're wondering if Darcy didn't like when others denied her their participation. You should swallow. Your thoughts are echoed on Darcy's lips, and one of the corners of her mouth tilts up. You force the action, trying not to cough once you realize that not all of your food has been chewed sufficiently. Darcy laughs a little, and you feel your cheeks warm. You haven't hid your discomfort well enough. She remarks that she's never seen you this close before. You want to return the sentiment, only ever having seen her from behind the lens of your camera. But you remain silent, wanting to understand the objective of this conversation. Darcy compliments you, saying that you could have been a model too. Your face heats further as she peers at you. Why did you choose to hide behind the camera? You shrug, keeping your response short. You'd wanted to. Darcy seems to wait for an explanation, but sits back when none is given. She's unbothered by it, and that bothers you. What does she want? She glances around the very empty restaurant, appearing to think about something. You fly out early tomorrow morning for a shoot at Lulworth Cove, and instead of resting like you both should be, you're sitting here at the office restaurant. You needed rest to do your job well, but Darcy even more so. So her presence here is more peculiar than yours. Building up the courage, you ask her why she's found you. Darcy's gaze meets yours once more as she echoes your earlier words. She'd wanted to. You clench your jaw in dissatisfaction. That wasn't a good enough answer. Instead of confronting her about it, you turn back to your food, determined to ignore her. You were looking at a past issue of the magazine before Darcy's arrival, and you return to the activity now, compelling yourself to take another bite of your food. It's unexpected, but Darcy allows you to eat in silence until her own food appears on the table. It's then that she reveals that she's also your seatmate on the plane tomorrow morning. You look up at her, trying not to betray your shock and subsequent nervousness. You had to spend 11 hours on a plane next to Darcy? Your next immediate thought was which of your colleagues you could switch with. Darcy chuckles, no doubt seeing your feelings written on your face. She questions which rumor got to you first. It catches you off guard, more than finding out your flying arrangements, and you sigh. You don't want to do this with her, and you make it known. You just want to finish your food, go to sleep, fly for 11 hours to your destination, and then do the photo shoot. That's it. Without warning, you lose your appetite and push your food away from you. You gesture to the waiter to bring your check, and despite his obvious confusion, he moves to do as you've requested. Darcy watches you, not saying anything further, but pursing her lips in annoyance. She states that she only wanted to meet you because she's afraid of flying and wanted to alert you. She alerts those she flies with, just in case. You want to ask just in case what, but you remember that someone once warned about how manipulative Darcy could be. It was clear that she was looking for her next victim. You were determined not to be it. When the waiter arrives with your check, you pull out your wallet to pay, but Darcy is faster. She places her credit card with the young man, and he rushes away to process the bill. She says that it's the least she can do for the awkward disruption. You politely thank her, but don't waste any more time leaving the table. At least you have the decency to pay the tip. You have always thought of yourself as being pretty adept at spotting liars, but you had to second-guess yourself now. Laughing at Darcy's expense over a pre-flight cup of coffee was easy when someone had mentioned she'd also heard the fear of flying sob story. The last person Darcy had shared that story with reported that somehow they'd ended up in her bed that night. It was a neat trick to make someone feel like the hero, and then feel as if they deserved a reward. But as you watch Darcy's knuckles turn white clutching the armrest of the seat, you doubt your rush to judgment. It's fascinating. Her beautiful face is composed, hidden partially by designer sunglasses worn unnecessarily, starkly contrasting the death grip she has on your shared armrest. The airplane window is open, and she's staring out at the dawn, not paying your stares any mind. Takeoff is a bit rough, and you wonder if that just in case from the previous night had to do with a panic attack or vomiting. One you could handle. The other you'd be forced to. Darcy's breathing is shallow as the plane strives to reach altitude, and you have to ask yourself just how cruel you're willing to be. Holding tension on a 10-hour flight didn't seem conducive to a great shoot the next day. If you could palliate some of it, isn't it decent of you to do so? Disregarding the warning bells in the back of your brain, you reach for the contracted hand. Clutching anything for the length of time that Darcy had was going to cause stiffness and aching in the joints. Gently, you place your hand over hers, coaxing her to let go of the hard plastic. She doesn't do so right away, and it takes a few cajoling words to get her to finally flip her hand. Darcy latches onto yours, like if she doesn't, she'll drop out of the sky. You bring your other hand on top, trying to soothe her as she takes a few big breaths. Minutes tick by, and eventually, Darcy slips her hand from yours. She whispers that she doesn't want to inconvenience you for too long, but is grateful for your help. And that's the first time you feel the pull that everyone talks about. You recognize the danger you're in, but knowing doesn't stop the willingness to commit the folly. You retrieve her hand again, firm in your intent, and she turns to look at you. The two of you watch each other, and you wish her sunglasses weren't obscuring her eyes. Darcy uses her other hand to lift the glasses to the top of her head, and you briefly wonder if you've stated your thoughts aloud. The usually bright cyan is dimmed by the cabin lights, and something else you can't interpret. Darcy smiles sadly and states that she heard you all joking about her this morning. Your eyes widen, but she tells you not to worry. She doesn't hold it against you and understands the common view of her. She admits that most times, people are right. She's become what she's had to navigate the messy world of modeling. It was either hunt or be hunted, and she wasn't willing to be prey. The confession confirms the feeling from the previous night, and you voice your vexation, wanting to pull your hand away. But Darcy tightens her hold, asking to reveal something rather private. You haven't the slightest idea why she'd want to, given your very brief acquaintance with each other. But as she speaks, you ascertain why. For the past 3 years, she's only made those she considers predators her target. If she struck them first, they had limited opportunity to get to her after. She points out that if you carefully think about it, not everyone has a Darcy Atkinson story. She uses you as an example of that. She's never bothered you because there's never been a reason to. You're well respected and talented behind the camera. You capture her in ways she's never seen before, and you're quite humble about it all. She's always liked you, but from a distance. The reason she finally approached you last night was that she knew she'd be sharing non-photo shoot space with you for the first time, and it intrigued her. She wanted to gauge how nice you'd be. Darcy softly laughs as she admits that you were meaner than she had expected. but it's nice to see that you care when it counts. You're tempted to feel bad, but postpone the feelings. At last, Darcy withdraws her hand from yours and gives you another smile before turning back to the window. There isn't much else to say, so you distract yourself with other entertainment as the hours pass. When a bit of turbulence hits, Darcy is back to clinging to something. This time, it's her seat tray. You waste no time in grabbing her hand and holding it in your lap. You rhythmically squeeze her hand in reassurance, pressing play on whatever mundane thing she's been watching on her screen for distraction. No words are exchanged this time. But when the turbulence is done, neither of you pulls away from the other. You're not sure if it's always been this way, but you're now hyper-aware of just how often people bring up Darcy when she isn't around. She's wedged into the conversation, apropos of nothing. It's rankling your nerves, and you're losing the ability to hide the disapproval on your face. Landon, the videographer, notices and asks what the problem is. You can't articulate the odd surge of protectiveness you feel over the woman now scantily clad in only a small bikini, so you don't try. As usual, Darcy looks graceful and irresistible. But now you're noticing the accompanying lascivious looks from others. You're hearing the lewd jokes. Darcy notices too, but she only chooses to counter those caught with a dreamy smile. Only once do you catch that smile vanish and discomfort take its place when she turns away. Landon follows your line of vision, and suddenly he groans. Have you gotten caught in the Black Widow's web too? You've heard more clever insults, and tell him as much, your tone dry. He dismisses that and tells you that you need to stay away from her. She'll suck the life out of you. But how would he know? Is he taking this on the merit of anything he's ever heard about her? Landon tries to make another joke, but this time you unceremoniously shut him down by telling him to shut up. It takes him aback until he narrows his eyes like he's just figured something out. An unexpected accusation comes your way. She's got you stuck in her web too. The combination of his tactless statement and the knowledge that it might not be completely baseless snaps your patience. Without another word, you walk away from him to ready yourself for the shoot. The handsome English model posing as her travel partner has his arm casually draped around her as Tex briefs them on the direction of the shoot. Darcy looks completely at ease with the contact, and you wonder how much of that is a facade. A little while later, Tex calls for all crew members to get in their places and shouts a few things to keep in mind. You're only half listening as you hear the Englishman make a crude joke to Tex's assistant Paula about Darcy's body. Paula, one of the biggest perpetrators of Darcy Atkinson's hate and gossip, titters loudly. Darcy is far enough away from the pair that it's reasonable to think that she didn't hear, but you know she did when she rolls her eyes. Then she catches you staring, her gaze snagging on yours. For the first time since getting to the cove, you see a genuine grin from the model, devoid of any pretense. You find yourself smiling in return. Darcy raises her hands, acts as if she's holding an invisible camera, and pretends to snap a photo of you. The gesture makes you blush, and that heat lingers throughout the entirety of the first part of the shoot. During a break, you sit a ways from the crew tent, content to relax in the sand with your food and lack of company. For some reason, Paula has been outlandishly loud all day, and you suspect it has to do with her crush on the English model. She's going on about how she'd considered going into modeling as well, but that she loved to eat candy too much. As she's speaking and waving a candy bar around, Darcy breezes through, grabbing a fruit and bottle of water. Overhearing the conversation, Darcy interrupts, telling Paula that she doesn't think calories are the only reason she's not a model. Everyone in the tent makes some type of noise, snickering being the loudest sound among them. Paula whirls around, confronting Darcy with a shrieking, "Excuse me?" If that's meant to deter Darcy, it doesn't. Giving a bored look, she tells Paula that she's calling her ugly, if she didn't understand the first time. This time, the tent erupts in laughter and oohs, someone in the back yelling out, "Headshot!" Even you have to laugh. It's not the first time Darcy Atkinson has blatantly insulted another, but this time, you know it's deserved. Something has possessed you to be knocking on this woman's hotel door, and you're not sure what. The door swings open wide, and the model in question states that your presence is a pleasant surprise. You're nervous, but work up a smile anyway, asking if she's lonely this evening. The edges of her eyes crinkle softly as she points out your use of lonely instead of alone. She appreciates the distinction and steps aside to allow you in. You look around and see that you've caught her in the middle of a Mario Kart game. Frowning, you ask if she's brought her own Nintendo system, and proudly, she states that she has. It helps her pass the time on trips like these. She asks if you'd like to join her, holding up a second controller. You decide it wouldn't hurt, especially since you hadn't had a goal in coming to her room. It feels like the most juvenile thing you've done in a long time, but at the same time, you find it to be relaxing. Darcy wins almost every round, but it doesn't bother you. Something about her having unabashed fun is enough to soothe the sting of losing. Steering the conversation, Darcy slyly asks if someone has warned you about getting stuck in her web yet. The specific wording makes you pause the game, and you turn in your spot on the floor. Darcy is at the edge of the bed, positioning your faces close when you look at her. There's humor dancing across her features as she rests her head on an arm. You ask how she heard your conversation earlier, but she denies having heard it then. It was brought up later by Landon on the bus to the hotel. You sigh. Did she ever get a break? But you can tell that she's trying to keep the mood light, so you don't ask any of the burning personal questions that have cropped up. Instead, you joke that despite the warnings, you don't seem to be listening too well. She giggles and says that no one ever seems to. She moves to unpause the game, but you stop her before she does. There's one question you must ask. Darcy glances back at you, waiting patiently and seeming to understand that the mood has shifted on a dime. You haven't made up your mind on what you believe about Darcy. You've worked with the other crew members for years, some of them for almost a decade. You know they aren't perfect people, but the amount of distaste everyone holds for Darcy can't be overlooked as a mere coincidence. And one conversation with her mid-flight didn't disprove every rumor either. You need to find out for yourself. Regarding her seriously, you ask how long it will take for her to hurt you. Darcy considers the question, her eyes falling away from yours. Then, in a low tone, she answers, "It will take however long you want it to." It's not satisfactory by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a clever response, one that makes you think. While it's not a plea for innocence, it's not an admission of guilt either. And somehow, through the one sentence, Darcy has preemptively placed some of the blame for the eventual fallout at your feet. Did that mean your preconceived notions could play a part in this? You want a more straightforward answer. You almost want to demand it. But you know you won't get one. You'll have to answer your own question in time. In truth, was Darcy the one stuck?